Stan Edgar has the market cornered on superheroes, and I believe in season 3 we're going to find out that he has every angle of that market covered. So yes, let's talk season 3, which was greenlit by Amazon just as season 2 kicked off. Fantastic way to promote the new season of the show. As we've discussed before, a studio will often announce the follow-up project as the current one debuts to make you feel you want to make sure you stay up to date because this train's leaving the station with or without you. But it turns out, as it did with the end of season 1, that of course the show has to continue. It's just so good, and there are so many questions and new developments, so many questions left unanswered, and so many developments that we want to see play out. And that third season is currently in pre-production. They're stitching up Soldier Boy's costume as we speak. When it will actually begin filming, I believe one of you mentioned that one of the actors said that maybe February, but of course with the coronavirus pandemic going on, nobody quite knows for sure. But you can be sure based on what everybody's talking, what the cast and the behind-the-scenes team are talking about with the boys, they will be ready to go as soon as Amazon will let them. Now, there's a lot to break down here, so get comfortable, and there are chapter times down below if there's something in particular that you want to get to right away. So at the end of season 2, the 7 are whittled down to Homelander, Queen Maeve, Starlight, and A-Train, whose powers are back and has just been reinstated. But that leaves 3 empty spots to fill. Oh boy. Because the Deep's comeback tour didn't work out. Stan Edgar says taking back 2 makes you look weak, but perhaps he can be persuaded. He is a bit on the ropes now, PR-wise, although I don't know if the Deep, the Church of the Collective said his numbers, his PR numbers were looking good, because if you don't bring the Deep back, I think Stan Edgar lost more members than he was anticipating in the 7, and if you don't bring the Deep back, I don't quite know how else you can keep him on the show, because he's already done the outsider bit in season 2, and he's certainly not going to go join the boys after what he did to Starlight. I don't know. Hughie's not quite on the team as much as he was before, but they have to figure out what to do with the Deep, and I think the most likely answer is to find a way to put him back on the 7. He's too good a character, I think, to get rid of, and I don't think he's been played out. I think that we haven't really even seen him totally use his powers yet. And Stormfront and Black Noir, of course, are both in the intensive care unit at Vought. Showrunner Eric Kripke says Black Noir will be coming back, but one has to wonder if that almond joy near kiss of death was a life-changing experience for him. I really want to see Black Noir step up in season 3. For instance, will we learn his origin, since it's now been revealed he's not a Homelander clone? Once you pull on that string, you gotta keep pulling. I'm very excited. And some of you, for instance, think that he might be related to Stan Edgar, because Edgar picked him to go after Butcher, and perhaps there's a closer relationship there than with the other members of the 7. As for Stormfront, Kripke has clarified that while she is not dead, she won't necessarily ever recover, because he called her new state a fate worse than death, which is why he particularly liked it from a creative perspective. Although, if she does come back, as some of you have been pointing out, that means she'll get to sport Stormfront's eye patch from the comics, because Becca left her mark for sure. And also, I think, we'll talk about Ryan. But that doesn't mean, by the way, even if Aya Cash doesn't get better going forward, it doesn't mean we necessarily won't see her in season 3, as you'll find out in this discussion. But back to Vought, they've tabled the mass production and use of Compound V for now, although that one Supe who escaped from the mental health facility is still out there, while Victoria Neuman is the new head of the Government Office of Supe Affairs. Her main directive is obviously to hold Vought accountable. But since it's been revealed that she's a Supe, taking out the Church of the Collective just after they offered her dirt on more Vought Supes, can't have that, right? Why else would she do that unless she was working for Vought? Vought is where almost all Supes are created, and controlling her would mean that Vought, Stan Edgar, so smart, would control the entire superhero situation. He would control the source of it and also the group policing it. So I think it's very likely she is a Vought operative. And she's hiring Hughie, to be exact. He just got a job there. We're not quite sure yet if he's working for her campaign or if he's working for the Office of Supe Affairs. But I would guess, based on his previous experience, if he doesn't start there, he'll end up there. And we'll talk about that. Oh, it's going to be good. Basically, is the Butcher reporting to Hughie? We'll talk about it. All right, so He told Neuman that he wants to work for her to bring down Vought and Supes the right way, but the delicious irony, and it's so the boys, is that he's probably now actually working for Vought. Also, he and Starlight are now officially in a relationship, and since they've both been pardoned, she's back in the 7, he's no longer wanted, perhaps the show in season 3 will explore what it's like to publicly date a superhero celebrity. That's very much in line with what the show has done in the past. And that would make him her Steve Trevor or her Lois Lane, and I think that would be really fun to explore. As for the rest of the boys, like Hughie, they are no longer wanted. is reunited with his family, although we didn't see how his wife felt when he came home. She seemed the most upset in season 1. Frenchie and Kimiko are finally in a good place and together. Well, Butcher is not in a good place. He's now a widower, a surrogate father figure to Homelander's son, Ryan, who accidentally killed his wife. Butcher's wife, and Ryan is now being hidden by the CAA instead of Vought, and we don't really know if that's much better of a situation. Although I do have a theory about that. We'll get to that in a moment. But Butcher got a job offer from Mallory to work for the new Office of Supe Affairs. And Eric Kripke says, as we all guessed, that he's going to take that offer. Because yes, in season 3, Kripke promises we'll get the boys we know and love from the comic, an official strike force funded by and protected by the government. That should be nice to see how they operate at that level. Even when they worked for Mallory, they were very much off the books. But here, they might still be off the books, but perhaps less off the books. And they're going to even have their offices in the Flatiron Building, Kripke says, just like in the comic. Butcher will surely be getting the gang back together, but with Hughie now again working for Neuman, maybe we'll get another member for the boys, perhaps a Mallory CIA hire. I think that would be really cool. I don't know how long they would live, but that's another thing. You need you need a red shirt. You need a red shirt for the boys, and that would be a way to get one in there. And so, now that we know after 2 seasons how the boys became the boys, Kripke says season 3 will be about finding out how Vought became Vought. So enter Soldier Boy, who will be played, as we all know now, by Jensen Ackles, who comes from Kripke's previous show, Supernatural. And Kripke says in the world of this show, which differs from the comics, Soldier Boy led Payback, which was Vaught's 7 before the 7. I think in the comic, the 7 was always the premier team, but here, in the past, Payback was the premier team. Maybe they won't even go by the name Payback. Maybe they'll keep the name the 7. But Soldier Boy was basically the Homelander early on. There was a statue of him glimpsed so briefly in season 2 that you probably wouldn't have caught it if the show hadn't tweeted it out. And the show has also said, I don't know if anybody actually saw this on air, but it reads 1910 to 1982. Was Soldier Boy killed, or is he only officially dead and somewhere around, still around, like Stormfront? Remember, Supes don't age. So I think it would be cool if he were to miraculously return and rejoin the 7, because they sure could use the boost to their image PR-wise. And that would be very interesting for Homelander to have another, America patriotic-themed superhero fighting alongside him. And who would be the leader, considering Soldier Boy did it first on Payback? I think that would be... I don't know how much more abuse Homelander can take. We're going to talk about him, but I think that would be it would certainly be a different kind of threat to his leadership than Stormfront was. Because Stormfront, of course, found out the best way to deal with Homelander was to take him under her wing, is, I guess, the most PG-13 way to put it. But yeah, so we'll see. I think that could be very, very interesting. Now, speaking of Stormfront, remember in the comics, she was a member of Payback, so expect to see her in flashbacks. But we would see her as Liberty, because of course that was her first superhero persona. I was just saying in my spoiler review that this show needs more flashbacks. Looks like we're going to get a whole boatload of them. And I also said I wanted to see Stormfront's past, and it looks like we're going to get that as well. Now, her husband, Nazi scientist Frederick Vought, got a pardon from the U.S. government so that he could work for Vought. The company that actually ended up being, did he found the company? I think he did found the company, although I'm sure some American businessmen said, let's form a company together. But, they've been focusing a lot on Vaught's pardon, Frederick Vaught's pardon, but I'm sure that his wife got pardoned as well, so that she could fight for Vought. And, Vought would have the company, his wife would be a major figure as Liberty, and I think that could be very interesting to see. So expect Frederick Vought to be cast for season 3 as well. Now, who's going to tell us all this? Stan Edgar, he does like his secrets, and Stormfront is only speaking German right now, and not very coherently, or very, she seems to be off in her own world. So I don't think she's going to sit us down for a once upon a time. But you know who will? I bet you were getting finally the legend from the comics. Yes, this is a character who was a take on Stan Lee, respectfully, although still in the nature of the boys, who headed up Vought's comic book division. Isn't that great? And of course, he knows all the dirt on the Supes he created promotional material for. So imagine if Stan Lee's Marvel Comics, they weren't characters that Stan Lee created himself or thought up of. I know that some of you might have some comments on that, but let's be respectful of Stan Lee's legacy and memory. But anyway, what if they were real superheroes? And, Stan Lee, aka the Legend, was, tweaking their images for public consumption. I think that's pretty interesting. Now, in the comics, the Legend is an informant for the boys since he knows everything that went down. So expect to see both an older and younger version for flashbacks, actor for the Legend to be cast for season 3. That is going to be a choice role. It's also worth noting, speaking of the Legend flashbacks, that in the comic, he had an affair with Queen Maeve in the past, and then in the present, that resulted in a soft spot for her. He would sometimes help her out, give her insider information, and perhaps, I'm not sure if they're still going to do that because Maeve isn't like Stormfront or maybe Soldier Boy, where she has been around for a very long time. She seems to be as new a member to the Seven as the other ones. So maybe they'll have to do that with another female Supe. But Maeve sure could use the storyline. I just saw recently, or this morning, one of you a comment on one of my videos saying, how does Maeve show up everywhere all the time? How does she seem to know what's going on? Maybe the Legend has been feeding her information all along during the first 2 seasons, and we'll just finally get to meet him in season 3 ourselves. Now, with this history lesson going on, how the heck is Hughie going to stay in the loop over at the Office of Supe Affairs? Well, remember how much he talked about his mom in the end of season 2, who just mysteriously disappeared one day? I mean, on a show like this, people don't just mysteriously disappear without there being a bigger reason why. It happens, but in a show like this, you have to expect some foul play. And also you don't put a monologue like that in the show if you're not going to have that character come back. So expect Hughie's mom to return and to be involved somehow with everything that's going on. And one of you suggested that Jack Quaid's real-life mom, Meg Ryan, could take the role. And I think that is an excellent bit of stunt casting. And she's not really working. Actually, that's a polite way to put it. She's not working at all. So I think she's definitely available, and that would be so much fun. I don't know if Jack Quaid would want that, because it would really shine a light on his parents. I think he's building a celebrity persona for himself with this show and doing a voice on Star Trek Lower Decks. And Dennis Quaid's been a little problematic lately in the press with some of his political choices. So I don't know if he wants to do that. But I don't know. Meg Ryan's so great. She would be like an Elizabeth Shue type. It's crazy. Meg Ryan's down. Her career has gone down so much that she was, of course, at one point nowhere near so much higher up than Elizabeth Shue in terms of like the hierarchy of Hollywood. But these days, I think they're pretty comparable. And Elizabeth Shue was fantastic in season 1. So to bring Meg Ryan on board, I think it might be too good an offer to pass up. Jack Quaid, I think he should just go with it. Also, again, if Butcher works for the Office of Supe Affairs, does that mean that he has to report to Hughie? That would be fantastic. We don't know where he's going to work. Is he going to work with I'm sure he just wants to work with Victoria Neuman, and I think he probably doesn't want anything to do with the boys because his whole thing is to get away from them. But considering his experience and that he already knows them, he is the perfect person to be their liaison with Newman's office. Now, we also have to find out what happens with Ryan. Such a great character, so much potential. We just can't drop that. For instance, now that his powers are activated, who will train him? Also, how powerful is he? And who's raising him just to become the person that, is so important that he becomes? Mallory herself, I like this. Mallory lost her family to Lamplighter, including her grandchildren. So I would love to see her raise Ryan herself. I think that would be great instead of hiring someone at the CIA to do it. Mallory has the professional and personal investment here, I think, to do a great job. And if Mallory's taking care of Ryan, Butcher, of course, is very close to Mallory and is always checking in with her. So that would keep Butcher close to Ryan and to make sure he's becoming a good person, which was literally his wife's dying wish. As for Homelander, his son has been taken away from him. So is his girlfriend. He's being forced to work for a company that clearly doesn't respect him and doesn't care about him. Stan Edgar made that perfectly clear, episode 1, season 2. And now he has teammates that are outright blackmailing him. Heck, even A-Train took out Stormfront by exposing information. So Homelander sees how dangerous, information can be. So that makes Homelander a caged animal. And Eric Kripke himself has said that Homelander will turn into a homicidal maniac in season 3. What has he been for the first 2 seasons? But I'll be interested to see how Homelander could potentially level up, considering he's on such a tight leash now by both, again, Vought and his teammates, and the Office of Supe Affairs. Everyone's watching him. So how would he become like a serial killer? I'll be very curious to see how Homelander's like such a tricky character, such a balancing act. But so far, I think Kripke and Anthony Starr have pulled it off. And also on that note, something else that I think that is on Homelander's to-do list in season 3 will be getting back that recording from the airplane from Maeve. He just can't let that go. He needs to take some of this pressure off, and I think that's the most obvious and, well, I don't know if it's the easiest, but it's the clearest way to do it. Wow, it sounds like season 3 is going to be just as jam-packed as season 2. I hope they get more episodes. Let's put them up to 10. Most other shows are 10 episodes. I think that they need the extra 2 if all this is going to be going on. So what are you hoping to see, and what do you think of what we know so far? Share your thoughts down below, subscribe today, and of course, as always, you can check out some more videos right now.